Hey,
mamas.
I'm Jess.
I'm Erica.
And I'm Melissa.
Guys, so have you guys watched the Trials of Gabriel? I mean, is that what it's called? Yeah, Trials of Gabriel Fernandez.
I haven't, but you guys have talked a lot about it, so I've actually done quite a bit of looking into it. It sounds nuts what a poor little boy went through.
Yeah.
So we done an episode on discipline, and obviously we had a guest come in. Her input of it was, yes, you do have to discipline your children because that's why this generation is the way it is, basically. You know, everyone just wants to kind of sugarcoat everything and just kind of talk to people in a different manner.
Yeah.
For the most part, I agree, because I am a firm believer that the way you talk to your child is how they see themselves. So if you continuously say, you know, you're a bad child, that's their inner self. So they're gonna, when they go away, they're gonna be thinking, yeah, I'm a bad child. Whereas if you try to rephrase things, and I know sometimes as parents we get caught up and we're stressed. Like I told you guys today, I had a really stressful day. Sometimes we lose track of that, and we sometimes do say things we perhaps don't mean.
Mm-hmm.
We've also mentioned before, it's big of us to kind of accept that where we've gone wrong, and apologize to our children if at any point, you know, you said something rude, and try to make them see it differently. So not you're a bad child, you know, you've had a difficult day, perhaps me and you didn't see eye to eye, but this is what we can work on, rather than using bad language. Because, you know, child abuse isn't just black eyes. I've researched a lot, and because a lot of abuse is really hard to, I forgot what I was going to say.
Detect?
Yeah, so it takes a very long time. So you guys saw me the way I am, you'd never think, you know, she's being abused. Because it has to be that, you know, Ollie's beating me for you to see that something's going on.
It's not always the physical side as well, and the mental side of it is scarring too.
Yeah.
And we've touched on it on a few topics at how damaging it could be in all aspects, really. But the physical side, obviously, it leaves marks, right? And so you would think that it's more visible and easier to detect, as opposed to when it's a mental torture.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, while the physical side of abuse is shocking due to everything it leaves, not all signs of child abuse are obvious. And sometimes ignoring our children's needs and putting them in unsupervised. So I don't know if you guys have ever, maybe Melissa, you're at that stage where you kind of think Maya needs to go to daycare now. Mm-hmm. But you're all over the place because you're you see so many cases of, you know, nannies beating kids up and stuff, and you think, you know, you're leaving your child with this stranger. And I know, Joel's been nursery, you know, he's in school now, but I always would kind of are you okay? And you thoroughly check their body to see if, you know, once Joel came back with scratches and stuff, and I would literally be fuming, because in my mind I'd be like, oh my God, I've just put them in a dangerous situation. And you kind of put your negative mind to think more, and you know, your mental state can just go all over the place, because you can start in one place and your mind's already creating different scenarios. So yeah, that's really bad. Also, exposing them to sexual situations, you know, there's been mums and dads that, you know, say if they break up and they get with another couple, we've also said that the fear of us getting with someone else and that other person not being really close with our child. How do we know, you know, for you, Melissa, obviously I know you don't like touching on this, but if you get with someone else, what happens if that person's a predator, you know, and you're having your little girl with that person? So it's all these things, and I don't know.
For the kids that make it out, because obviously this little boy didn't, did he?
Mama's Code.
When I watched it, I felt physically sick, to the stomach, because I watched an episode, and the next day, I don't know why, but I would look at Joel, and I'd be I could see Gabriel's face in Joel, and I would look at him and I'd be like, how does a person, you know, a mother, we're meant to nurture our kids, we're meant to love them, you know, I carried you for 9 months in my stomach, and now I'm just going to abuse you and allow this other...
So it was the mother and her boyfriend, right?
Her boyfriend, yeah. So it wasn't El Niño's dad.
Yeah.
And this other man wasn't the other two children's dad either.
So they had 3 kids in their custody, basically, looking
Yeah.
after them.
Yeah. So basically, Gabriel, when she had him, she basically walked out of the hospital and left the baby there because she said she didn't want him. And so I think it was the uncle, they were gay. And he said that he wanted to adopt El Niño. She was just like, yeah, take him. I don't care. Do what you want with him. So I think El Niño then went to live with, obviously, the uncle and his partner. And then a few years later, this lady comes and she's just like, okay, yeah, now I want my kid back. And so you've ripped, and I'm not saying you as in the mum. Yeah, she takes a big part, but the court failed this baby because if a mother can easily walk out of the hospital without her baby, it's because she doesn't care.
Family itself failed this child from the very beginning. From even when she was pregnant, she found out she was pregnant and she said, I don't want this baby. The family, instead of being like, okay, maybe you're not right, because obviously she was into drugs as well. She wasn't. From the point that you're telling your family, I don't want to have this baby, why is your family supporting you in going through with it when your family know what kind of person you are?
Her family didn't agree with it. El único that agreed was el abuelo because he was homophobic. So he basically said that the uncle had abused of Gabriel. But all they did was love this little boy like he was their own. And even El Niño, like, he adored them. He was in such a happy home. And then viene esta vieja. And, Jess, if you think about it, it goes beyond the family. Because the family is just one part. But, legally, they have to go to court. So you start thinking, like when I watched the recap, you kind of, like, you start questioning things, The court apparently's defense was, in that district that Gabriel lived in, they are all about giving parents second chances, like mums. You basically can abuse your child all you want, but if you want a second chance, they'll give it to you. You just have to go to a parenting class and that's it. You get your child back.
Clearly, even that failed, because you would think if, as a state, let's say, you are prepared to give people that are not, let's say, 100% to be parents, committed wise, if you're willing to give them a second chance, then you're willing to hold their hands through that process, right? In the sense of not only to make sure that that kid's in a safe environment, but to make sure that that is the right decision. As a country, as a state, you would have thought that they're like responsible over this kid and its welfare.
Well, they were. Because basically it was an open case, so social workers were consistent in Gabriel's life because of that.
How do you miss out on all the stuff that was going on around with him?
They failed him from the very beginning. Like, if you, as a mom or whoever, you walk out of the hospital without your child and no one comes for that child for free. It was 3 days that he was there alone.
In the hospital?
Yeah, as a newborn. Literally, she gave birth and walked away. Like, I don't want that child.
Jeez.
At that point, do you not already think this is a red flag?
Oh, before, like, when you, obviously, sometimes mental health plays a big part in this, and we don't know to the extent that she had it. But, even in the pictures that they show of her, she doesn't look all there. And she was, like, on drugs and, it's just, she wasn't a stable person.
Yeah, and it's like, obviously, those things also make her, like, put towards the situation, because if you're a mom that maybe your life hasn't been as good as you would have wanted, maybe you were into drugs from a very young age, or maybe you were the type of person that your parents were so strict on you that you literally had no freedom. So obviously when you did, you kind of just like say it's at door, and you put yourself, like, you thought, oh no, I want to enjoy and do the things that I wasn't able to do when young. So obviously when you put into a situation where you're now responsible for another child, but you still feel like maybe you're maybe still a child, not in a sense of like, I'm a little child, but in the sense of...
But that was her youngest child. That doesn't
no.
make sense though.
No, I know, but what I'm saying is that all these things are already like in her head, which is why she never looked right from the beginning, right?
Yeah, but you saying that is... She obviously didn't get the chance, but she has 2 grown-ass kids before her baby. So it's like, and this is what Melissa asked before, why did they pick on him and not pick on the other 2 children? Like, what was it about him that they decided to hate him so much? And apparently he was gay. They were like, there was like, you know, they just always thought he was an evil kid.
They would dress him up
as a girl, right?
Throw all his clothes away and literally left 2 dresses, and they would dress him up and laugh at him and call him gay. It's like,
so there was obviously like some sort of homophobia going on between the mum and the boyfriend. What I don't understand is it's the little boy's mum. Do you think as a person you can be so cruel and so cold?
Well, it goes down to what we spoke about in the co-parenting episode, you know, what Andor said. Opportunity-wise, the mum is solely responsible for the kid. You know, nowadays, like, we both have equal parts, but in all other aspects, you know, it's always the mum. The mum's the number one carer. The dad's seen kind of like, you know, like he's maybe laid back, or he's the worker of the family. But he made a very valid point, which was, you know, so what happens to those mums that, you know, don't love their children? And this is a prime example. And like, for instance, let's put it to test in like England, baby P, you know, with everything we've spoken about, you know, like in the discipline episode, we can't hit our children. So how do these individuals consistently get away with abusing their children? Is it just like by luck that they get like the shit social workers, the shit jurors, and like, but it's just ultimately every single person in this episode failed this baby.
And let's obviously remember that he was already in school because he was 8, right? So he was, you know, let's say with like maybe babies, if they're not in school or if their parents don't take them to like day centres or whatever, then they're probably not on a daily basis looked like, they're not seen by other people. But he was in school, and from what I understand is that multiple teachers would raise alarm bells to his social workers and nothing. But
there. When I initially watched the episode, I'd think, you know, she was the only one that kind of cared.
Yeah.
But at what point, like, try to put yourself in a teacher's point of view, yeah? Like, put yourself in her shoes. If I've reported it consistently and I still see this kid is being let down, will I let him go home? No. I will chase up and be like, what's going on with this case? You know, the last picture that they show on the program before his death, he wrote a letter to his mum and he had burns, like scabs here. She says that she sat down crying. I'm sorry, but crying is not going to get you anywhere. Me, I would hold the kid back and I'll be like, I'm not letting go. Like, the police has to physically come here, see this kid and tell me he's not being abused. I'm sorry, but you can't take just, and this is the thing where it kind of goes, you know, like sometimes they say, you know, adults tienen la razón. What we need to like normalize for kids to have la razón también. That's why kids are always like, specifically in this case, you know, why go to the mum if you're being told this kid is being abused? Who the fuck is going to abuse this kid if it's not his mum? Like, you have to be physically blind to not see that your child is being affected. And you've clearly said, Fish, he's gone to school. So these people did not even give 2 shits of what they were doing to him. They didn't fear that they would get caught because they were physically leaving marks in his face for people to see. He had lumps in the autopsy. Well, when he got taken to hospital, basically dead, the nurse that received him said, you know, a person's skull is round. His one has had bumps del skull fracture que tenía. Y la profesora también decía that he always had como like lumps in his head. I'm sorry, but...
And they're asking what happened. Oh, no, I fell. It's like, obviously he was scared to say anything. But it's like Erica's saying, like, you really think if you actually did care and actually were concerned about the child, do you think you would let them go out of your hands? And I think it was the school director that was like, oh, don't get involved. Like, we don't really want problems with those things. It's like, you're literally watching a child come into your school a little bit dead every single day, and it's not, you know, like you send your children to school because it's a safe place to, you know, they get their education, but you know that apparently your child's going to be safe there, and you know, but clearly not.
The school have a responsibility over all children, so for the director to even say that is like,
Exactly. It's like, well, and like Erica said, it's like, okay, maybe it was a state that they, they gave moms a second opportunity, but these people had endless records of calls of the school and calls of from people, and the neighbors would say, oh, like something is going on in the house, and it's like, if you have a record of so many calls, do you not actually think, hold on a minute, let's actually check the child? Like, how many calls and how many reports do you need for you to actually be like, okay, we understand you're saying your child is fine and he's lying, but can we speak to him? Like, no one gave a fuck.
No, even before that, Moo, how does the court just blindly give you the child? Did no one go to check her house? Did no one see, her income? Because in part of the episode, it kind of states that, she only wanted Gabriel because of a fund that they give, more like a benefit that they give because of the kid. So she needed that fund, so that's why she took the kid back. Very bizarre, the whole situation, because you think just from that get-go, like, where was all these, paperwork that you have to do? You basically gave your child away, and you can just come blindly and take your child again. Like, no one questions anything. No one questioned the mum's stability. Like Jess said, who on earth leaves their child in the hospitals? What, as a juror, I'm just going to be like, oh yeah, she needs a second chance. No, I need to check if this woman's physically able to maintain this kid, keep him healthy. If you're going to give the child back to the mum because, second chances and yes, whatever, be on top of this child, continue visits, go make sure that this child's being fed, go see how the situation he's living. In films, don't they show that? Or is this literally just films? Because clearly real life this is not happening.
Well, I don't even think it's just films, because obviously not to compare, but when you even adopt an animal, they're looking at where you live. They have a standard.
Everything. They come to visit you.
You would have thought that it's a child's life. They have a responsibility. I feel like that was just, it's obviously they neglected him. They neglected that child. They neglected the fact that there were so many obvious signs for call for help, and no one failed to actually acknowledge. And then it also goes to the point, these people who are there to, like your social workers, the school, the teachers, all of these public services individual, are they even competent enough to be doing their jobs if they can't even call out or see situations like this?
Well, I don't know if
because
he saw
he's
it,
not the first.
but they just were like, this is not our fault. How? Because charges were raised against them as well, and they were like, that shouldn't be the case because it wasn't on them. Even the person at the end, there was a person, the last call that they made that the child was being abused, he closed the case because the mum said he was lying. How do you close a case? So basically that guy signed off Gabriel's life. I mean, like sometimes I think about it and I'm like, from like the beginning of the episode, you'd automatically think something is wrong here, because when this baby was picked up, basically lifeless from the floor, no one got an ambulance with him. No one.
That was the saddest thing, man, when I saw that.
His parent, no one he went solo. As a parent, if I'm the mum, I'm sorry, I'm going with my child. There's a red flag. And then the police were questioning like the kids, and they had already, planned out what they had to say. They had sent La Nina to clean the blood. But blood is still very much there. That's why they run out of little sticky notes to place where everything was. Basically, there was blood everywhere.
And to get there and not find them crying.
That's disgusting.
Yeah, she was like, oh, I'm just in shock. And apparently in the call, so basically the first responders were like, you need to give him CPR. Is he breathing? So the guy was like, no. Oh, okay, I'm going to give him CPR. They were like, do you know how to give him CPR? Yes, I know how to give, because he was a security guard. So security guards, public services, you get trained to do that, right? Yeah, I'm going to give him CPR. You've been trained first. I'm sorry, but when you are trained to do that, once you start CPR, you cannot stop. When the first responders got there, no one was beside the body. So they didn't even try to revive El Nino. And it changed at every single moment, because first he called, then the woman called, and then, you know, it was always like, oh, he just dropped, and then the first call was like, oh, he was playing with my son, and then nothing was consistent.
And when they got there, they realized that they had tried to wash him off. They tried to wash the clothes. It was all like, you know, when you grab clothes and rinse it off everywhere. And it's like, but if you know that your child has had an accident and he's on the floor unconscious, you don't move them.
No, their excuse was, oh, there was too much blood, so we had to go wash him off. For what? When you have an accident, like if it's head-wise,
You're not moving.
you know you cannot move, because you can cause more damage.
Mama's code.
I mean, I know it's not an excuse, but do you think also it adds the fact that it wasn't a friendly neighborhood, that maybe the authorities didn't really care because they didn't really want to go in there?
But that shouldn't even be a question that they raise.
Like, how are you going to say to me, oh, it's a dangerous neighborhood and that family's always screaming and shouting and there's always problems in that household? It's like, well, maybe that's why you should actually be on top.
Or you shouldn't have signed that baby
yeah,
away.
Exactly. I was just going to say, or maybe you should have never done it in the first place.
You know, if he was in a good neighborhood with a good family, why not keep this baby in good hands?
Or leave him where he was with his uncle. Like
that's the thing.
That was the happiest that little boy ever. I think that was the only point that little boy knew what love was. And they would show the pictures of how he was with his uncles. Yeah, they were gay, but so what? They were giving him love. You could see how happy the little boy was, and you cannot take a happiness away from, you know, la mirada de un niño. But because they're abusing, and so you're coming to tell me that you think the uncle is sexually abusing the child with, you know, the child has nothing on their body.
So just because they were gay, that was why they thought that.
So they said, oh, you know what, let's take the child back to their moms and see that he's getting abused because we can physically see it, but it's fine, you know?
Basically, the episode it happens over 8 months, this torture. So from the moment they got him, the torture lasted 8 months. And Gabriel was subjected to horrific torture, the abuse substantial. They fed him cat litter, put a bandana and sock in his mouth. They knocked out his teeth with a bat, shot him in the face with a BB gun, pepper sprayed him for fun while he laid in a bathtub. He would show up to school with bruises all over his face, as well as fresh cigarette burns and shaved hair. Gabriel's brother testified that Aguirre, so the mum's boyfriend, would hold him up by the neck, while his sister said Aguirre knocked the air out of Fernandez on several occasions. So imagine, this baby could have died way before this time. Like, todo lo que aguantó.
What was their plan then, to just kill him, and they succeeded in the last time, and that was...
It was almost like they used him as a punching bag.
Jeez.
On the episode. They said that the woman's boyfriend was like, oh, if you don't shut that kid up, I'm going to shut him up forever.
So
it's
sickening.
like...
Another excuse they gave was that apparently Aguirre was jealous of Gabriel, because he wanted... So, I'm sorry, but, you know, like, your kid, like, you've not seen your mum. It's obvious this kid loves his mum, regardless of the situation he's been put in. And apparently, you know, Aguirre would hit Pearl. And so Gabriel would tell her, be like, oh, don't let him hit you. And because of that, he would get basically...
So Gabriel was still
tortured.
So he was still
Gabriel
defending his mum.
Yeah.
Regardless of the fact that she was also torturing him.
Yeah.
It just goes to show as well about, we talked as well previously about the innocence of children and that pureness that they have, and the fact that you're nurturing them and teaching them right from wrong, and regardless of what was happening and the torture he was going through, it's his mum. So we talked about kind of giving your parents a second chance, or looking at them like, why don't you love me? And I've read as well on some of the things about this case, was that he even wrote a suicide note. Like, he was 8. How
desperate.
You're a child.
It's so sad. Just during the trial, the jurors were told that the autopsy took an unusual 2 days because the injuries were so substantive. The thymus gland, you know, that little thing here, was barely there.
Oh my gosh.
And a normal boy's gland weighs about 100 grams. His one was 10 grams. So he must have been choked so much. care. On the last I cried so much in that part.
Fucking heartbreaking. Oh, the card was, it was a house and with a little door, and it's like, open here to see who loves you. And obviously, as the mom would open the little door, it was a picture of him,
all burned,
and that was the last piece of work on his desk at school for Mother's Day. And imagine, like Erica's saying, like, to the fact that he still loved her no matter what. Like, he had no evil in him. He had nothing wrong with him. And
well, on the note, he would be like, you know, I'm going to be a good boy. I'm not going to make you angry. It's like, really?
So he was obviously like blaming himself for the fact that he was being tortured, and that goes again to what we said about mentally, because...
Well, it's the words you use with your kids. You know, like I said at the beginning, if you're telling your child you're a bad kid, that's going to stick with them. You know, they're going to think, I'm a bad kid, so that's going to be my inner reflection of myself. So he generally thought that he was behaving bad when all he was showing was love.
Mama, I love you.
You know how we've been saying how, you know, grandparents sometimes they make us feel like they take the authority away from us, and how, you know, they're like, oh, don't do this or don't do that. Like in this situation, and I say it because at the end of the episode, they have like a tree for the little boy, and the family hypocritically go and visit it. But it's like, you actually had the chance to take the authority away from the mom and say, like, you're abusing my grandson, my niece, my nephew. It's like, why do you think these people never got involved to that extent? Like,
maybe they did. But again,
maybe not strong enough.
It goes to show that while they have some power, the mum has the last say because the court basically gave her that authorization, basically. And also, so even if they took the kids, it would basically be seen as kidnap. Regardless of your family, if you're not the sole carer of this person, you're kidnapping this kid. So, you know, you have to look at the balance of it. Like, obviously, we get told like a small part of the story. We obviously see it. Like, I'm not saying that you're wrong in thinking that they're hypocrites, because I also think that, especially the granddad, like in the episode, you see him crying, but you were like one of the main persons that said that, you know, he got abused by his uncle, when you can see the love that they had for him. They were like, all we wanted was to raise Gabriel. And because during her pregnancy, she said she didn't want the baby, the brother spoke to her and she was like, yeah, you can take it, I don't care.
Did the family ever try to go to the authorities and say, like, you're coming with me to check for the child? Did they ever try that?
No, but they called as well. They called several times, because Gabriel could call them. The teacher once called La Abuela or something, and they called social services and said, you know, this is happening, you need to go check up on him. Because that's the thing, you need to think about the bigger picture, which is, as a person, you think you know, my mum can come here and try to take my child away. If I respect her, then she can do something, you know, like, I still have a lot of respect for my mum. So if my mum says I'm doing something wrong, I will acknowledge what she's saying. Whereas Pearl, you could see she wasn't there, and she didn't care what anyone said, you know. So a person that disturbed wouldn't give two fucks what the parents say.
I don't know if this was the case here, but could the boyfriend have been como amenazando a ella and the family, in the sense of, you know, if you get involved, then we'll carry on torturing him or whatever, like maybe...
No, but they did get involved, because they kept continuously calling social services and the police and telling them, you know, you need to go check up on him. And they will cry down the phone, and, you know, I think they couldn't even go to pick El Niño up at school, because that's one of the points I kind of thought today when I watched the recap, and I was like, hold on a minute, you know, like, you've gone to pick up Jojo to nursery, like, did these people not think, let me go outside to the school and wait for him and then we'll take him home? But then you have to look at, you know, okay, what's that going to inflict on us? What problems are going to come along? Is it going to make it worse for Gabriel? Because, you know, you're trying to save him, but realistically, the police are going to come and going to be like, you know what? He belongs with his mum. Like, they've done it the first time. They're going to do it the second time.
They probably didn't do as much as maybe they could have done because of that, because of fear of, shit, you know, if we say or try to do anything, he will be the one suffering the consequences. Because obviously, if you call social services, I know there's like a waiting list for, you know, it's not a thing where like, oh, come over here with me. But if you were to call the police or go to the police stations and kind of beg them to say, come with me, or report it, but be outside of the house, let's say, waiting for the police, and you put yourself in the position and be like, no, we have to go in. Like, she's my daughter, but that's also my grandson. We, like, kind of like, as the police is, you know, they're always on call to come in and see these things to make sure that they're actually seeing the child. But again, at this point, it's kind of like the police will say or see him and be like, yeah, but it's his mom and maybe he just has a bruise here or there, even though it wouldn't take a, you know, a science person to see that this was more than just a punch or a...
So let's think about it, because sometimes could it have been because of his race?
Well, that they didn't care.
Yeah,
Maybe.
because you know, obviously he's a Latino little boy, right?
Yeah.
Probably growing up in an area that isn't the greatest, like you guys said, underfunded, lack of money going in. The system doesn't really care.
But this is the thing.
They're like forgotten.
Yeah.
Let's say, you know, that area you're forgotten, and it doesn't help as well that your ethnicity probably in a way played a part as well.
But then who do you call for help?
Yeah.
Why does that care? If I'm fucking getting killed, it's like, who else do you call? And we see it. So, like, for example, what's been happening in America for over the past few months, it's like you're calling the police to help you, yet they're going out there to kill you.
They're
So it's like,
working against you instead to protect you. Yeah.
If the police is coming here to kill someone while they're being arrested, so why are you now going to feel safe to call? Like, there's no one to call. And like you're saying, maybe obviously the neighborhood, they kind of think, oh, they're kind of trashy people and their lives don't matter, basically. And then, do you know what really got to me? The fact that at the end when they were sentencing them, the bloody that woman had the audacity to say, I just want to read something and say sorry.
Dickhead.
Oh, what?
God, honestly.
Yeah.
And her
Basically saying
face.
sorry.
But wait, didn't they not plead not guilty as well?
The guy did.
Yeah.
But just because he wanted to plead not guilty to planning the murder. So I don't know the phrase of it. So intent to murder, basically. So he was going to get trialed for death sentence. So he wanted to plead that it wasn't planned, basically. It just happened. But that doesn't just happen. Like, the autopsy showed...
And if there's a record...
No, and the autopsy showed that there was loads. Like, this happened in a period of 8 months. Like, his skull didn't just have one fracture. It had multiple fractures. He had broken ribs. He had broken hands. His eyes, the sockets were broken. And it's like, how do you think... You know, un niño de 8 años is going to aguantar the weight of this huge ass man, because he was huge. Like, you know, that proper bouncer kind of guy.
Yeah.
Like, okay, fair enough, you want to slap him, whatever. But you're coming full force. The kids testified that he would grab Gabriel from the throat and hold him up. At what point do you think this is not you planning to murder this child? You are intentionally doing this.
You know what the outcome will be.
Exactly. Like... But apparently to him, it was like, nah, it wasn't planned. We didn't plan this to happen. But yet you lied and you tried to clean up a crime scene because you knew you were at fault for this.
And imagine, like, sometimes, you know, you've probably shouted a bit too hard at your child for telling them off or whatever. Like, you kind of go back and you think, oh my God, why did I do... Like, in that moment, because you're so hot-headed, you're just like, oh, shit. But once, you know, you've calmed down, you think, man, I shouldn't have done that. And then you will go and say sorry. And then, you know, you kind of take note and say, you know what, to yourself, I reacted the way I shouldn't, you know. Yeah. You become aware of what you did. You don't just do this and think, oh, I just hit him and it's fine. Like, but I mean, at the end, he got sentenced. Well, they put him down. Do you think it was unfair that the lady didn't get put down as well?
So she's still alive.
Well, she got life in jail without parole, but I don't think. Well, to be honest, I don't think death is the answer, because he won't suffer. But
yeah, same.
I mean, he is suffering because they don't just die like that. Like, he's still in jail. He hasn't. Like, he's still waiting to be given a date. It's just inhumane what they did.
It is.
And I just
not of a name.
You know, there's just only so much a human being can handle. And this baby, obviously, God rest his soul, but he took a lot.
And at the hands of the person who should be the number one person you would expect to love and look after you forever.
I try to see it in like, you know, like maybe he didn't put much of a fight when he got told that he was going to go stay with his mom, because he must have thought, oh, finally, like, you know, because normally as a person you question, why doesn't my mom want me? And she obviously had the 2 other kids, so you kind of like try to get into the baby's mind and kind of think, you know, maybe he just thought, oh, finally I'm going to be with my mom and she's going to love me and we're going to be a happy family. Honestly, my heart aches. I watched some at work and I was in tears, to the point like a colleague was beside me and he was like, what's wrong? And I was like, oh no, I just sneezed. And he was like, you're literally flooded with tears and you just sneeze. And I was like, yeah. But it's just so heartbreaking, because I literally compared that little kid to my Jojo so much. And I mean, like you guys have said, sometimes, you know, you get sidetracked and stress can, you know, overcome your anger and it can kind of blind you. But I think there's a thin line, and I don't think I could ever imagine inflicting so much pain on my child. Like, I don't think I can.
Just imagine, like, sometimes, you know, you've had a bad day or whatever, or your child can tell that you're angry, but they'll find the moment to, like, come and hug you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you start, like...
It's so sad.
Like, if you think that maybe after a beating that, you know, his mom or the boyfriend did to him, like, maybe before bed or maybe before they locked him up in the bloody cupboard, maybe he looked at his mom and thought, oh, I love you. Like, and for her to not feel that.
Yeah.
It's like that the judge said at the end, you know, even animals take better care of their children than what she did.
She did.
And we kind of just think of it as in, you know, what Gabriel went through. But imagine those 2 other babies that have had to mentally see all of this. Imagine how much that's impacted them. You know, I don't know how much. I think they must be teenagers now. But, you know, they must be fucked up in the head.
Yeah.
See, like, their brother go through all that and kind of not know, you know, like we question, like, maybe why didn't they torture them? We don't know if they did. Maybe it just wasn't spoken of because, you know, they're still alive. But you kind of think in a kid's mind, because they were still pretty close in age, you might think, oh my God, if they're doing that to him, imagine, when am I next? You kind of always think, oh, I can't, I have to be on my best behaviour.
My mom will kill me.
And, you know, like, now that we're seeing it as in, like, obviously we see it from a mother's perspective on how that, like, how you allow that to happen. And, you know, the issue of abuse and neglect becomes muddled, because here we can see that it's very apparent that it's just the mum, because obviously that's not the dad. So it's like there's always a debate on, like, gender. And normally you'd think, you know, naturally the mum would never kill the child because...
It's the mum.
Yeah, it's that kind of like, you know, you've been growing this child for 9 months. You wouldn't think of harming it. So the dad obviously has that less connection, which everyone assumes. They're both pretty much the same. Like, they go hand in hand. Both of them can be abusers.
Where was Gabriel's dad?
He was in jail. He also says that he failed him too. And it's so upsetting because, like, he couldn't do much. But he says in the episode, he's like, I feel like I failed him because had I not done what done, I wouldn't be in jail and he could have been with me.
It's nuts.
And it's all a vicious circle as well, because, like, imagine his little brothers and now could possibly become those abusers in the future. And can you blame them?
No, of course not.
Like, of course, people will argue and say, oh, but if they live that life, they will try to do the best for their child and not do the same. But the amount of trauma and the things that they've seen, it's just like it was their normal. So it's like, can you really blame a child to end up like that?
And it's something out of a film, because
it's way
you
beyond.
can't imagine that. That's just not normal. The stuff they had to see, it's not normal. It's not, I mean, let's be honest, even when sometimes we're watching TV or I know for a fact that sometimes I'll cover Maya's eyes if there's news and there's bombings, and, you know, I don't want her to see that thing. She's too young, she's a baby, you know. Todo su tiempo, like we've always said before. So if we're sheltering our kids from certain things that we think you're probably too young to even see this right now, Imagine having to be in a situation where you're living it. And what's the saddest thing is that Gabriel wasn't the first and isn't the last. And there's so many other children.
Well, a few months after, there was another one. I can't remember his name, but he was 10 and it was the same. Like, you know, he just kept showing up with bruises and stuff.
And he died as well.
He died as well.
Do you know what the fucked up thing is? And I remember saying this to Erica when we watched it, was that so many moms and, well, so many men and women out there are trying to conceive, are trying to do everything possible to have their own child, to love that child. They love him. They've got all this love that they want to give to his child. They'll go through IVF. Maybe they're not fertile. They'll come to adopt him. But then you get these people that it's like, why? Like,
you're not worthy to have a child.
Yeah, and it's like, this lady, she's got 3 children. For what? You clearly don't love your children. Like, you're not there. You're not suited for it.
It's just, it's true what they say. Not everyone was born to be a mum. And unfortunately, some people are blessed with the gift of giving life, but they don't deserve it.
Don't see it as that.
No, and they don't deserve it. They're not worthy of that title, you know, because some women do go above and beyond for their children. And that's how it's meant to be, because ultimately we're raising like little human beings for the world. What are these kids going to grow up to be? You know, imagine like the nightmares that these kids must have.
If you as an adult as well feel like you've been traumatized by watching that because it was graphic.
And we only saw one part of it because we got told some of the things that happened. They physically were there. They saw their brother being made fun of. And apparently there was a point where the mum and the boyfriend took goes at hitting him with a bat.
That's just disgusting.
The world is so fucked up.
That's just wrong in every level.
And
wrong.
It's like one half of the world is trying their best to raise a good human, and the other half is there's always going to be bad.
But this goes beyond bad, because I think that woman, when she dies, she's gonna literally rot in hell. Honestly, like, you know, like they say, like, you know, people deserve forgiveness. She does not deserve that. She's not. In her letter, she says that she hopes her kids can forgive her and her family. How do you forgive that? I mean, I can't imagine or think of an excuse for her behaviour. There is, like, mental illness, you know, like, some people will say the core issue nobody seems to address is that, you know, some of these people have mental illness. But if you know this and you know you are not capable of handling a child because you're going to physically, then why do you take this child?
Then why?
Your child is not a punching bag. Your child is not your stress ball. I don't know. They just support and justify the maltreatment that they're giving this baby. And, you know, at no point did one of them think, oh, wow, like, you know, se nos fue la mano. Like, you know, like we've mentioned, you know, sometimes we scream at our kids and we're like, shouldn't have done that. I don't think that ever crossed their mind because it just kept getting worse and worse.
So the fact they're even trying and justify their actions, then they have no remorse.
No, absolutely none.
It does leave you speechless, cierto?
Mama, I love you.
The thought of harming my children would be like the last thing. I think I would harm myself first, then doing anything to my children. And if I knew I was going to get to that point, I would seek help and I'd be like, I need you to take the kids away.
Yeah.
I think my head will at least function for that last little bit to put my children in a safe home than me causing them harm. I couldn't. It's a very, very, very hard series to watch and swallow. Like, how many times did he cry for help silently because he knew he couldn't, you know, he would always be like, no, I'm okay. Like, yeah, I love my mom. She's perfect. But silently, he was out there pleading people to kind of see him, you know, kind of like, help me. Do you guys think that he knew they were going to kill him?
I don't think so, you know. His innocence and his love for his mom. Like, I don't think it ever crossed his mind, my mom's going to kill me. And he was so innocent that he wouldn't even run away. Imagine, he could have just run away and walked as far, literally walked. He didn't have money for the bus. He could walk to the end of the world if he wanted to. But his innocence and his want to not disappoint his mom.
To be love as well.
Do you think, had they not killed him, in that instance he would have committed suicide, because the abuse would have continued, and he had already obviously written a suicide note.
I think he would
because like I've said, there's so much a human can tolerate, and I think for him, like, it was just a lot now.
If at that young age he's already thinking like, I'm better killing myself than being here, he would have pushed it, or he would have found himself so badly injured that he must have thought, what's the point? Like, I can't take this anymore. Whether it's a child that has come from rape, whether it's a child that's been abandoned, a child it's a little angel. It's the innocence that is in a child is just the most beautiful thing.
And you kind of can go to what we've said, you know, in our discipline. It's not hitting your child with anger, because that's when you can kind of lose sight of how hard you're hitting them.
Lose control.
Yeah. And I think these people they just didn't care.
I think we should probably wrap it up, and really a golden tip, a bit different in this episode, but where you can be the voice of the vulnerable. You know, it is quite a distressing series. I personally haven't watched it, but if you kind of feel like you want to look into it or read up about it, then you can, and there's also the episode on Netflix. We'll also put down some links on organizations that help to prevent situations like this, and maybe an idea if you want to help out and reach or try and support and be more aware of cases like the case of this little boy.
Rest in peace, Gabriel.
Mama's Code.